Hi, my name is Eduardo Ox, and this is another very short video that I'm recording for a workshop that I'm going to give on this Saturday. The short title of this video is Material on M-3 Meta-E, and the long title is What does it mean to save links to everything that is interesting? The main idea behind the EV is that EV lets us take executable notes of everything that we do, and saving links to everything that is interesting is the harder half of taking executable notes. And note that the title of the workshop is Workshop on Creating and Saving Lisp Hyperlinks. The main tutorial of EV is this one, Find the EV Quick Intro. It's about how we can use Meta-E to execute Lisp expressions. And it has a paragraph that says that Meta-E accepts several different numeric prefixes that alter its behavior. In this tutorial, we are only interested in one of them. Meta0 Meta-E highlights the sex for a fraction of a second instead of executing it. Try it above. And if we try this here, above, Meta0 Meta-E highlights the sex instead of executing them. When we execute them, their results are shown here in the lower left corner in the echo area. The result of this one is 6, the result of this one is 20, the result of this one is 26. Let me raise some natural questions. What are these other prefixes that the tutorial does not explain? What do they do? Is there a place in the documentation that lists these prefixes? Where is the source code? Is it readable? How can we discover all that? I think that I've said that in several places, but let me say it again. My memory is very bad. In this video, I'm going to pretend that it's even worse. So a natural question is, how can I rediscover what Meta-3 Meta-E does? Or more realistically, the information about Meta-3 Meta-E is scattered in the source code and in the documentation of EV. So how can I rediscover all my material on Meta-3 Meta-E? And I'm going to split this in two parts. How do I find this material? And how do I save hyperlinks to everything interesting that I find in the way? And I'm going to alternate between these two things. Every time that I find something interesting, I'm going to save this hyperlink, and so I'm going to show how I save hyperlinks with very few keys. Before starting the demo, let me explain something about the window setting that I'm going to use in this video. In most of the workshop, we are going to learn how to use the three window setting that I recommend to beginners, which is we start in a situation in which we have a target buffer, usually in a single window, but sometimes we have several windows here. Then we run a variant for beginners of find here links that, well, we want to create a link to here, and the hyperlink to here is going to appear here, and we have to select that hyperlink and edit it a bit, and then we copy it to our notes that are here. And then we type meta-h meta1, and we go back to the original window setting. That usually is just a single window, but can be something with more windows too. What I usually use is a one window setting in which I do everything as in a single window. I start with the target buffer and I want to create a hyperlink to here. Then I run find here links. I get a window setting that still has just one window, the temporary buffer with the Lisp hyperlinks, and then I select the right hyperlink, edit it a bit, and then I copy it to my buffer with notes, and then I go back to the original situation, which was this one. In this video, I'm going to use a variant of the one window setting in which everything is going to happen in the window at the left, and the window at the right is going to be unchanged for most of the time. And in the window at the right, I'm going to show a cheat sheet with what I want to present in the demo, because my memory is very bad, so I need to cheat a bit. Start the demo. In this demo, I'm going to show how to reconstruct these nodes here. I mean, some months ago when I wrote this in just a few minutes when I was looking for information on M-3, M-E. And let me show more or less how I look for this information and how I save hyperlinks on the way. I remember that MetaJ has information on how to go to the main tutorial, so let me type MetaJ. I want to create a link to this line here. So let me start by creating a link to the effect of typing MetaJ, and let me refine this hyperlink. I want a link to this string here. EEK does not admit refinements, does not admit postspec lists, but let me duplicate this and put a find here, because this variant accepts postspec lists. And let me refine this to make it point to this string in this temporary buffer. So now I have a reference that I can use this to go to the main tutorial. I remember that this is the name of the main tutorial. So let me go to the main tutorial, and the main tutorial has a section about how to use MetaE. Let me start by creating a link to that section. And in that section I have a paragraph about numeric prefixes for MetaE. It's this paragraph here, and I'm going to create a link to this string here. That is the most interesting string in this paragraph. So this link points exactly to where I want to. And I also remember that in this main tutorial I have something about the key sequence that EEV uses to generate hyperlinks about a certain key. I remember that this key sequence is meta-h, meta-k, so let me search for meta-h, meta-k. I want a link to this position here, but let me first create a link to this section. This link is a copy of this one that's above, so I prefer to delete it. Now that I have a link to this section, I want to create a link to this string here. So now I have a link to the explanation about meta-h, meta-k in this section, and incidentally this thing here is a demo of how to use meta-h, meta-k, and I can just run this instead of typing this very long sequence of keys. And when I run this, I get a temporary buffer in which this link is the best way to regenerate this buffer. The best because it has a lot of information. It has the name of the function here at the right. So I want something like this, but for meta-e. So I'm going to type meta-h, meta-key, meta-e. I get this buffer, and I'm going to save this as a way to generate that temporary buffer with links about meta-e. And I know that the link that I want here is this one that points to the source code of that function. Let me start by doing the same thing that I did before. Let me refine this hyperlink here and create a version of it that points exactly to this line. Let me test this hyperlink. It goes to the source code of this function. So let me copy this hyperlink to my notes. The doc string of this function explains what this numeric argument do. This line here explains what it does when the numeric argument is 3, so I want to save a link to this position. So here's an explanation in English, but I want an explanation in code. The source code of this function is very short, it's just this, because this function delegates most of the work to this other function here. So let me save a link to this other function. And what this other function does is that it takes the numeric argument and it uses this to produce the name of yet another function. So when the numeric argument is 3, this function executes this function here, eval lasp sexp 3. So let me search for a function with this name. Found it. Let me create a link to this function. And now let me create a test for meta3 meta-e. I know that if I run meta3 meta-e here, it does this. It's similar to when the prefix is true. When the prefix is true, meta2 meta-e evals the sexp and shows the target of the sexp in another window. So meta3 meta-e does the same as true. It evals and shows the target of the sexp in another window, but it also switches to the new window. So let me try. Let me try it here. Meta3 meta-e here. Open the target of the link in the window at the right. So let me create a demo for that. The demo is going to do something like this, but 3 lines above. So let me add this thing and let me test it. Works. Let me show the cheat sheet here. Okay, now I want to understand more about this function here. It shows the target of the sex before pointing another window and switches to it. And it seems that this function uses this to do most of the hard work. So let me try to understand what this function does. I'm going to create a link to its source code. The link is here. I'm going to copy it to my notes. That's it. It's a weird function, but the comments say that these functions are explained in this tutorial. Find multi-window intro. So let me start by copying these lines here to my notes. And now let me find more references to this multi-window intro. I know that this link here is a link to the index of the main tutorials. First of all, let me create a link to this to remind myself that I can go here by typing meta50j. And now let me find the link to multi-window intro. So it's here. Let me edit this a bit. So this says that this tutorial is tutorial number 15 here. So let me go back to this tutorial, and I remember vaguely that there are references to what the tree does, and I remember that this thing is related to the effect of meta3 meta-e. So let me store a link to this reference here. And I also remember vaguely that in the fake tutorial that is an index of Emacs keys, there's a section about keys that split and unsplit windows, and it probably has something about this key here. So let me try to find that. The tutorial about keys is this one. And let me see, it has something about Ctrl X3. Oops, Ctrl X3. It does. So let me save a link to this thing here. but I also want to link to this section. So let me do this. Let me do something more elegant here. And this is my recommended reference about how this key works. And I also have this note here to remind me that split window horizontally means splitting it in the left half and the right half, and with a bar between them. So let me also keep a link to this reference here. And also let me follow this link here, and I'm going to keep a link to this. And also a link to this, Ctrl X3 here. So now I have lots of explanations about Ctrl X3. And also in my notes I have something that I've prepared several months ago when I was rereading my documentation for this multi-window thing, and I realized that the demos, sorry, let me see if I can find the demo that I want. Okay, so I don't have a demo here that creates a very complex window setting, so I created these things here that create some very complex window settings. This one creates this window setting here, and this one creates a variant of that window setting in which the windows are resized in some way. And when I wrote these notes, I also kept links to find true A and find true B that seem to be related to Ctrl X3. So let me see if I can find them in Find Multi-Window Intro. Here in high-level words. So let me create a window, a link to this section too. Well, let me stop here. I just wanted to show how I can create lots of hyperlinks very quickly. So this is how I usually work. I create hyperlinks to everything that I find interesting, and you can see that in just a few minutes I created all these hyperlinks here. They may look like garbage to you, but they don't look like garbage to me. I like them very, very much. So that's it. End of this video.